That opening, jeez. I mean, you've only experienced it twice, but it just gets me so pumped up. Like, I was like coming down today, and for whatever reason, I was feeling like a little sluggish, and then like that thing hits me, and it's just like getting caffeine injected into my veins. So, welcome everybody to AcoNight, a subsidiary of TRB Live. Thank you for joining us here on AcoNight as we talk about the Acolyte, episode 3 called Destiny, written by Charmaine DeGrate and Jen Richards and Jasmine Flournoy, and directed by Kago Nada. With me, as always, of course, is Lacey, and our guest this week, our first guest on AcoNight, and we're so happy to have her, is the co-host of the Force Toast podcast and the Jedi Way. Plus, she is an absolute assassin at Star Wars trivia. Laura Kelly, welcome to TRB. How you doing?
I'm doing amazing. God, I remember those days when I was an assassin at trivia. I feel like these days, those skills, you don't use them, you lose them, and I'm not using them nearly as much. So I honestly don't miss those days. But yeah, those were good times. Some of them were good times, honestly.
Do you ever watch Star Wars and see something and you're like, I'm kind of glad I don't remember what that is now?
Oh, every single time. Every time I see any new Star Wars, I'm like, I'm so grateful to not be taking the most notes I've ever had to take on any, like, forget college, school, anything. Like, the most note taking I've ever done was Star Wars trivia. And I love leaving that in the past.
I'm with you on that. I think Lacey feels the same way. Lacey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Star Wars is in the chat, says that the intro gets them pumped up too. So
Star Wars.
Thank you so
Star
much.
Wars. We love you, Star Wars.
That validated all the work that went into that.
Yeah. Lacey put that together. So hire Lacey to do your trailers.
As for trivia, I played one game, I lost. So yeah, I'm not that person.
Yeah, but that guy was good too, Evan.
Whatever, he was
gold leader. Yeah. But we're here to talk about the Acolyte. We're here to talk about Star Wars. But real quick, we'll get to the audience in a moment. But Laura, just for our audience, I'm sure a lot of them know you already. You've been podcasting for a long time. Again, the trivia, the Schmodown. But where can they find your podcast? Where can they find you and what you got going on?
Yeah, you can find my podcast, Force Toast, a Star Wars happy hour, on Twitter and Instagram at Force Toast Pod. And you can find me on Twitter almost exclusively talking about Star Wars at @shutup_Laura. I have the same handle on Instagram, but I don't use it very much. So come find me on Twitter. That's where I am primarily.
That's such a good name, by the way.
Thank you.
Where did that come from? I got to ask.
You know, it's such a dumb story. I don't know if either of you watched the show 30 Rock on NBC, but one of the writers and one of the actors on the show, his name was Lutz, and his handle on Twitter was Shut Up Lutz. And I just decided to model it off of that. And so there's not even like a really good story to it. That's pretty much what it is.
I like that. That's cool. Thank you to everybody who are joining us live, or if you're listening on your favorite podcast app. Either way, thank you so much. We're so glad you're here with us. If you are live, we do have super chats available. If you'd like your comments or questions read on the show, we can do that. And thank you for all that support. But we just hope you're having a good time. We are going to get to the Kel-Naka scale in just a moment here. And in order to participate in that, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/TRB podcasts. Tiers start at $5, and we appreciate your support. Thank you very much. It allows shows like this to happen, among other things that we're doing here at TRB. All right, so I think I covered all of that nonsense. You guys ready to rate this sucker?
Let's do it.
All right, let's rate the thing on the Kel-Naka scale. We love Jonas Sotomo here, so we had to name our scale after Kel-Naka, of course. Laura, you are the guest of honor. We have episode 3. It's called Destiny. Do you want to go first, or do you want to defer?
You guys, Swagman is in the room. Like, I don't know if I want to go first. I'm going to have... No, you know what? That's fine. I'll do it. I'll step out onto the ledge and I'll give my rating first. And I want to explain myself briefly before I do so. I have this friend that anytime we do a scale of 1 to 10 rating of anything, just the most random thing you could possibly think of, he always prefaces it with, and you can't say 7. That's 7's a cop-out sometimes, and I understand that. No, sorry if one of you has 7 as your rating. I realized I just said that out loud when one of you very well could. So I didn't pick 7. I kind of would have liked to pick 7, but I live by that rule because I think it's actually a decent rule. So I have to go 6, unfortunately, with this.
Okay.
And that's primarily where I am kind of overall with this series, not really just with this episode. But yeah, sorry to add explanation to the rating system that I don't even know the rules for. Where do both of you stand?
Well, and you're so Lacey and I aren't really big High Republic fans, but you are. So I mean, we'll probably get to that in a little bit,
I'm
but
so excited to have you talk about it
yeah,
because I really want that perspective
I
from
want
someone
that
that's like
perspective too for
really in the
sure.
High
Yeah.
Republic. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I'll go next. I'm a little above you, Laura. I did 6.5.
Okay.
I did 7 last week, so that was my cop out last week. But
I did 7 too.
This is a new rule. You guys didn't know the rule. Now you know you don't even
no,
have to keep the rule. I'm like,
a cop out. Okay. But yeah, 6.5. I enjoyed the episode. I thought the twins were great. The little kid actors, I thought they were really good, and I continue to say Lee Jung Jae is just carrying it. He's just killing it on this
Yep.
show.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad they got him in Star Wars. He is outstanding. But Lacey, we turn it over to you before we put our scores together here. Would you give episode 3?
I also gave the episode a 6. I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed the first 2 episodes, which I gave 7s to. Ugh. But I think it was a solid episode. It was fine. It was good. It moved the story along. I have a lot of questions that we're going to discuss. I think for me, it felt like it should be a part of something else. Like instead of being its own episode, it felt like it should have been a part of another episode. It just felt like it cut off so quickly. And overall, watching the first 3 episodes, I feel like this should have been a movie instead of a series. Because it seems like they took a movie and they were like, let's just chop this puppy up and throw it up on Disney Plus. And I'm like, if I just got to sit down and watch this whole thing, I feel like I'd have a different perspective, even at this part. Like it would mean more to me seeing the whole story than the one segment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting
That's how I
because
feel.
I've seen because people had issues with The Mandalorian when it came out because it was the
Yes.
first thing they saw after a Star Wars movie. So obviously it wasn't going to live up to the budget or whatever. But now I feel like people are longing for the story of the week because of how this format is. And it's funny, Laura, we're having you on, and Kevin Smets did like a movie cut. He did an edit of Obi-Wan.
Oh, he
And, like,
did. That's right.
yeah, and his didn't blow up the way some other guys did, but I watched Kevin's because I love Kevin, and I thought he did a great job. So it is like interesting because Obi-Wan was supposed to be a movie, and then it became a show, and then Lando was supposed to be a show. Now it's going to become a movie. So Acolyte was probably still in the middle of them deciding what to do with Disney Plus, but I sort of agree with that. But that gives the 3 of us together, our score is a 6.2. Definitely one of the lower scores that we've had on all the shows that we've done like this. But that's okay.
It happens.
Yeah, I mean, I consider 8s and above like great. So I think 6 is still solid. We're not giving this an F. We're still in the mix here. But then we did check in with our patrons. They rated the episode too, and we'll get to one of their comments as well. And they gave it a slightly higher. So they're sort of with us, 6.5. Still a lot of Kelnakas on the screen, which is nice. You like to see that. You like to see Jonas. Jonas employed is a good thing. We love Jonas.
Mhm.
But yes, so right on the money there. 6.5 for our patrons, 6.2 for us. And it makes me feel like a bad Star Wars fan, but at the same time, it's even other people who I know love Star Wars are like, yeah, this show, I don't know about this show yet. And Laura, you were sort of saying that too. You say yet because it is like this mystery show, so maybe the payoff is what takes us over. But it's interesting nonetheless. We do have a comment from Colin Cormier who said 7. So his apologies to you, Laura.
I feel bad that I instituted this non-rule, that I even put this out in the universe. But honestly, it's kind of like, it kind of is helpful. Like you really have to commit to what you're
Mhm.
saying and like really give it some thought if you're avoiding 7. Not that this person isn't giving this thought. I fully appreciate 7 as a rating for this because honestly, I did enjoy this episode, I think, more than the first 2.
Mm-hmm.
But Lacey already kind of touched on this. The way that these episodes are edited and the way they kind of cut off, I can't help but think that this show would have benefited from the sort of Netflix model of dropping half the season on one day and the second half then like a couple of weeks later.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's really, I don't know if it's just the way that it's cut, but I do think that this show is going to benefit greatly from when we're able to finally binge it at the very end and we can watch the entire thing start to finish. I'm looking forward to that day. And I do think by the time we get to the end of this series, I will be all in and I'll be really excited about it. I'm just not there yet. And I wonder if maybe if I had had half the season, I could have sat and binged, if I might be whistling a different tune. I don't know.
Yeah, I got you.
I feel like the payoff is going to be there. It's just hard to watch it in chunks.
Yeah.
I'm nervous that the twist is I'm gonna be like, like Screen 5, like, I don't even know who that guy was. He was on screen for 2 minutes. Like, you know. It's Gene's guy from Mandalorian episode, whatever. But Colin said it wasn't great, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. So a little harsh from Colin, but thank you, sir. All right, now let us get into this here. Let us talk about the show, but before that, I know a lot of people are waiting for the next number in our giveaway contest. So the Sith code, basically every week I'm going to give you a number. The season finale episode, I will give the last number and let you know exactly what you need to do with those numbers. But for now, just collect the numbers, keep them safe, don't share them with people, be a good Sith, want more, need more, but don't help other people out. So the winner of this at the end of the season, when you figure out whatever the Sith mystery is going to get a Star Wars Return of the Jedi Emperor Palpatine. He's beautiful. Legends in 3-dimensional bust from Gentle Giant. So you'll have that. When people have those little sort of like marble stands in their foyer at their home, just put Sheevy right there as people walk into your house, and what a welcome.
Come someone that doesn't know Star Wars is like, is that your grandfather? Who is that?
That would be fun.
Yes.
Play that up. Be like, yeah, we actually had him taxidermed, and that is Grandpa.
Oh God.
Neck up. But this week's number, which is the third number in the Sith code, is 1. So jot that down, get it tattooed on your inner lip, whatever you have to do. All right, Lacey, let's get things going with our breakdown of the episode. So what we do to sort of just warm things up here is a quick shot. What was your favorite moment, or was
did we want to do super chats first before we?
I didn't even know we had any. Yeah, let's fire.
We have a couple.
All right.
So first we have David Ford. Thank you so much, David. He said, based on my industry experience, I said it was unlikely that Carrie-Anne Moss was on set for one day. Should have made pizza bet. Carrie-Anne, please. We'll see. We have a lot of theories.
Lacey has not
delivered
me a pizza yet. Yeah.
It hasn't happened. Yeah. It will.
So Laura, Lacey thought we had a bet for a pizza on whether Yoda would show up in any of the promo materials for the Acolyte. And I said no. Lacey said yes. It would have been cool to see him, but I'm getting a pizza.
I lost.
Just so you're wondering why we're talking about pizza so much.
I love pizza. You can bring it up anytime you want. I'm in Chicago after all, so I can go to rant if you'd like.
True. Lou Malnati's. Yeah.
Oh, solid spot.
Next is Cal. What up, Cal? Thanks for the super chat. Said hi, TRB, and lights out Laura Kelly. That intro is better than episode 3. Thank you, but hopefully episode 4 will be better. I have hope. I think again, it's not filler. That's not the word I'm looking for. I feel like it's a connector. It's like a bridge. Like it's getting to where it needs to go, and it needed this episode to do that. Joe's up. What up? Thank you, Joe. He said, not a fan of head-shaved Kelnaka. His head looks like a cantaloupe. I thought the same thing, Joe. Please don't add bald Wookiees to the Kelnaka scale. We will not. We're getting him from the Ariana Grande ponytail front. Not the cantaloupe shaved head. It did look like a cantaloupe.
Do you think is that a High Republic thing for Wookiees, Laura? Like certain hairstyles, like the way Padawans have braids, or is it just they wanted him to look different than Chewie, you think?
Not that I know of. I imagine they were just trying to, probably have a more distinct look than the Jedi that we're familiar with, set him apart from Buryaga from the High Republic, which many
Oh,
people,
right.
I think, when they first saw a Wookiee in the High Republic
You thought it
uniform,
was
thought,
Briaga, yeah.
oh my god, it's Buryaga. So yeah, I wonder if maybe it's something like that. Or I feel like people have zoomed in and seen that there's like tattoos or something. He's not like shaved. There's like tattoos or something kind of ingrained. So maybe we'll get that story at some point. Maybe there's more to it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I gotta get a closer look at those.
It's like blue, right? Like bluish on the side. It looks
I
blue.
can't tell. I haven't like taken the time to actually zoom in myself to examine this. This is just
Right.
what I'm getting this secondhand. Allegedly, there are tattoos.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's kick things off by sort of going over our favorite either moment or a line of dialogue or even just a shot from this show that stood out to you. Because whether you love or don't love something, we're all Star Wars fans, and there are always things that I take away, even from things I don't love. Like I think it was the second episode of The Mandalorian season 2 with all the spiders and stuff that I was not that big of a fan of, but I found things that I did like in it.
Frog lady.
So Frog Lady, you're right. So, Laura, did you have any particular favorite moment from this episode, or scene, or line, or shot, or anything like that?
My favorite component of this episode, I think, is Jodie Turner-Smith's character, Mother Anastasia. Every second that she is on screen, I am captivated and I'm all in, and I just want to hear more of her background, her philosophy, what she can do with her powers. Like I'm enthralled. So I'm already a little bit devastated that she's like there and gone already. But I imagine, given what we know about what the show is going to be and the structure, we'll see more of her in these different flashbacks and in these different points of view. So looking forward to more. But she's my favorite thing about this episode. This concept of the thread versus the force. Not necessarily that they're antagonists of each other, but just the different kind of philosophy and the different take on what we know of as the force was really interesting to me. That was my favorite part.
I mean, she was great, no doubt about it.
She
And I
stole
hope
it,
you're
I
right.
think, for me.
Yeah.
She was the best part of the episode.
I hope you're right that we see her again, and I have a feeling that like they left enough for us to be like, we need to revisit that moment more. So I think more is coming. I agree with you. So hopefully we do get to see more of her. But that's a great pick, no doubt about it. I saw a lot of people loving her on online, her performance. All right, Lacey, favorite moment, shot, line?
I really enjoyed the moment between Jodie Turner-Smith's character and Osha, where they're talking about whether she wants to be a Jedi or not, and specifically the line, "Don't let fear make the decision for you." And I was just like, oh, that is so good. That is such a good line. Because I think a big theme in Star Wars is decisions and choices being driven by fear. So the fact that she acknowledges that and she's like, let this be your story. If you're scared or not, do what you want as your choice. Really stood out to me. And also like the idea of mother-daughter thing meant a lot to me too, being a mom myself, that I was like, oh, I hope I'm as understanding as she is. However, I do know that it seems like there's something else going on. So I feel like I'm gonna eat those words in a couple episodes, because I think there's other things that are happening in the background where she's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna think about this," and then, yeah, I don't think that's the case.
Actually, I'm gonna sacrifice my kids to the gods, and you're like, no. What I said on that episode, that's not what I meant. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that seems to be the theme. People really do were taken by this character, but it's funny you know the motherly thing struck a chord with you, Lacey. With me, it was the two big moments between, well, almost three big moments between Osha and Soul, where they don't, the Jedi are like are breaking in. And they're like, we are the ones who were allowed to train anyone or test any child we want and stuff. And Soul's like, I need to like show this child who's terrified that
They have the
not...
right, is what they said, and I was like,
yeah, the right.
Mm-hmm.
But he clearly was like, I need to show this kid that she doesn't have to be afraid of me. And he like holds his lightsaber out and he like really connects with her immediately. And I felt that bond the same way I felt the bond and connection between Lee Jung Jae and Amon Listenberg, the same way he is acting now with the little kid version. I felt that connection right away. And then at the end, when he said, I forget what the exact line was. I think I wrote it down, but my notes are all over the place if we're all being honest here. He
Mine are a
said,
mess. You
he
can't
said,
really see it. It's a
he said,
mess.
I promise you, you'll never feel that way again. And like, that's such, like that line like kicked me in the chest because I have a daughter, she's 3. And when she gets hurt or when like she gets scared, I immediately want to make sure she like knows that she's safe and it's okay and like the world's not a scary place. So seeing him talk
She
to
trips
her
over
that
a
way,
twig and you're like, I will tear this tree out.
I will rip
Tree
that
is
tree out of the
gone.
ground
Yeah.
with my bare
The
hands.
tree
Yeah.
is gone.
So those moments I'm always a sucker for. And again, like I was saying, like Lee Jung Jae is just like, man, carrying it right now for me. I'm so glad they got him. And I only knew him, I'm not gonna lie, I only knew him from Squid Games. I know he's been acting for 30 years. So he's been absolutely great.
I feel like
But
it's a disservice because I also only know him from that. That I'm like, man, I got to go back and watch some
I
of
assume a
his
lot
other
of people would
films.
it's probably the
Yeah.
case if we're being honest. And then some people like Google his IMDb and like name off 4 movies.
I got to
from
watch some other stuff.
1995.
I feel like I haven't given him his full acting
Yeah.
attention.
Laura, did you watch Squid Games?
Oh, see, yeah, that's the thing I didn't. I haven't seen it yet. I will watch it eventually. It's on a very long list of things on my to-do
Yes.
list.
I hear you. I have things,
yeah.
man. Yeah,
Yeah,
no doubt.
I'll get to it.
All right. So let us talk about this episode in general. Where do we want to start? I mean, it sounds like Anastasia is the big point here. So Laura, did you have any preconceived notions heading in from any of the promo materials? And like, did it like what happened in this episode surprise you from that character's perspective? Where are you with this coven and everything that they represented?
You know, I remember seeing a lot of speculation that this was going to be tying in quite a bit to the Path of the Open Hand from phase 2 of the High Republic. And I remember thinking, like, there's no way. That's so many hundreds of years before, like, that cult is gone. I just didn't see it just seemed like a stretch that it could potentially tie into it. But there are some similar philosophies at play here. So I was actually surprised how much it sort of tied in. Basically, that cult's entire philosophy was that the Force should not be wielded. It shouldn't be used at all. We hear a little bit of that sort of similar dialogue in this episode. It sounds like it's just kind of a different philosophy. It's not necessarily that the Force shouldn't be used at all. They just call it something different. And this coven of witches do appear to still wield the Force. We see them Force pushing each other across the room in these sort of practice sessions.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sort of an interesting in between of what we got in Path of the Open Hand in phase 2 and what we're seeing from Jedi just in general in Star Wars. So I like kind of bridging that gap, but I really enjoyed getting to see another coven of witches in Star Wars. I like weird Force stuff. I like a lot of the stuff that we get in the Clone Wars and in Rebels that kind of plays on some of the weird Force
Rebels,
themes.
for sure.
So
Yeah.
adding that component back in and into this show, I thought was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I thought it was wild that there's sort that like I guess the big thing people are sort of talking about is how the kids were like conceived or created and stuff, which we still don't have the answers for.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna like over speculate and think it has anything to do with prophecies or whatever. But that line that really threw me was when I think it was Coral, who's the Zabrak, right?
Mm-hmm.
She
Mother
said,
Coral, yeah.
She said, like, what are you going to do if the Jedi find out how they were made or whatever? Or
there's something there.
Yeah. So I'm like, did they get sort of involved with the Sith and like, or are they able to conjure life with their magic? And like you were saying, Laura, like their understanding of the Force is this thread and the Jedi see it as this other thing. It's I don't know, it's all really interesting to me. That's why I think they have to go back again, because it looks like everyone was dead by the end of this episode, but I know Star Wars brings people back a lot, so
They do.
I think that there's a lot happening, and this was, I think, today I rewatched it again. This was like the 4th time I've watched this episode because I went back and was like, what else did I miss? And the whole ending sequence is so full of like moments that you're like, wait, what does this mean? What does this mean? How is this possible? What does this mean? And like from the moment Osha and May get into the argument and May throws the fire, you don't see May throw the fire, by the way.
Right.
She's holding
Yeah.
it, but you don't see her throw it. It just breaks and all of a sudden it happens. She's very aggressive all of a sudden, which I understand little kids get annoyed and they say things they don't mean, which is what I think happened with May. It appears to happen over a time period that you don't exactly know how long it was from the moment Osha had the conversation with her mother, and then she's in her room packing. She just goes, "Go pack, and we'll have a conversation with the, the elders or the whatever she calls it. What does she call it?
Her advisors.
Advisors, yeah. So you don't see that, but you do see fire. Then May's gone. Then she crawls into the vent, and when she's walking, you don't know how long she's walking for. All of a sudden, she stops, looks up, and you hear screaming, and the subtitle is like "witches screaming," and there's a big explosion, and then all of a sudden, she's in the like big kind of power place where the big battery is, and somehow Master Soul is there, and you're like, wait, why is he here? What did he get the memo to come back early to get her? Like, what? How is he magically there? And then in the ship, he hesitates a lot when he's talking to her. She's like, what happened? And when she asks what happened, he pauses and he's like, so about that, your sister started a fire, and then you have Indara and Torben in the background who are blurred out. You can't really see them in detail. Torben has the scar across his face, which he didn't have earlier. And Soul is straight up crying. You see tears running off his face. And all I can think of is Soul, how genuine he seems to be from the moment we meet him in this series to there, going back the 16 years. It seems like he's lying in this moment to her. Like something else happened and he's lying to her, and it pains him to lie to her because he knows that he's part of a bigger plan that he can't go against, but he's telling her like, hey, your sister did this thing and there was a fire. And he might be telling the truth there, but he knows ultimately something else happened that he witnessed that he's not telling her because she's too young to understand what happened to her mothers and the rest of the coven. Because I think the Jedi went back and started a fight with them. And it didn't go well. And I think Kelnaka got possessed. I think the other guy got possessed. Torben got possessed. They all started fighting each other. That's how Torben got the scar.
Yeah, because there's a TV spot where we in that set, that coven set, whatever that is, that garden hangout area where they do all their magic,
like the courtyard.
I'm pretty sure it's Torben and Soul or two Jedi are fighting. Like it's in the TV spot, so we haven't seen that yet.
Seems to turn on everybody. Yeah, and there's got to be a reason why he exiled himself. I think this episode, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, will mean more later on, and that's why I couldn't give it a high score, because I don't know where all these threads, so to speak, are leading, because there's so many different pieces that just don't make sense. And I don't like how she told to me the conversation, like I said earlier, the conversation she has with Osha, where she's like, oh yeah, I'm going to take it up with my advisors and we'll think about it. To me, that's like a parent being like, oh yeah, I'll talk to your dad. You're not going anywhere. And I guarantee she started a fight with the Jedi and we're like, you're not taking my kids. You're not taking my daughters. You're not taking these people.
Fair.
Meanwhile, you have Osha who's like, am I in a cult? Am I in a place that's like kind of weird? Should I be?
I want to go to another cult.
Like, am I in a cult now? Like, that's how I just felt bad. And then you have the Jedi show up that are like, you shouldn't be training children. We have a right to children. And I'm like, okay, so this girl's getting passed from one cult to the other cult.
Right.
Yeah.
Bananas.
Right. Children can't consent to being in cults.
Yeah. And you just want to, you feel for them because you understand that you forgive your parents often for their, discretions or downfalls or bad decisions. And then you take that trauma with you later in life, but you forgive them because they're your parents, whether you like it or not. And I feel like Osha and May in general, May more than Osha, kind of just said, okay, whatever you want, not really considering the ramifications of what comes next.
Yeah. I kind of felt parallels between Shmi Skywalker letting Anakin go and Anastasia letting Osha go. I
Right.
thought they were going to be sort of juxtaposed, where Shmi, like the mother of the greatest Jedi of all time, as Dave Filoni calls him, like letting him go explore and be who he's going to be. And I thought, based on the early conversations that they were having, Anastasia and Osha, was that she was using fear to keep Osha home. And we've seen that in a lot of other movies and stuff. And like, I don't know why the first thing that popped into my head was Truman Show, when they were like made him afraid of water so he wouldn't like try to leave the island. And it's just
Oh
like,
yeah.
yeah, and I felt like they were just like indoctrinating her to be like, don't go out there, it's scary, like you gotta stay here, you gotta stay here with us. But then she turns and like redeemed like herself for me in this episode, because I thought, like, I did not like how she was like just not like strangling her, but sort of like keeping her like so close to her. She was afraid to lose her. It's very like Sithy vibes, like the fear of losing and stuff.
It was striking me as like psycho, like abusive husband, like that possession and wanting her to stay.
Yeah.
And like being like, I'll just kill you if you want to leave. I'm just like, I mean, that was like alarming to hear.
It was a Gone Girl moment for sure.
Yeah, a little bit. So I'm curious, what redeemed May for you in this, John? I'm just curious.
Oh no, Anastasia.
Oh, okay, got it. I was like,
yeah,
wait,
my bad. No,
yeah,
my
no,
bad.
fair enough.
No, May kind of sucks this whole episode.
No, May sucks here. Yeah.
She kinda sucks.
No, Anastasia, I think just because at the beginning when she's talking to Osha, she's just looking for everything to make Osha feel like she needs to stay. And she was like, it was sort of like last ditch effort stuff, like throw whatever against the wall to like just convince her not to go with the Jedi and do this test. And then she realized how genuinely passionate that Osha was to want to learn what else is out there. And she said, like, okay, you know, you can. And that's when I was like, oh, finally. Because I thought she was going to do full manipulation mom mode, where she's like, you're staying with me and that's it, because I said so. Because May's already on board with everything. So we just need her to get on board with her sister, and away they go. But she did sort of say, like, you know, you can go and, you know, you can be tested. But at the same time, she's like, purposely fail this test, please, because I don't want you to leave.
Well, that's why I'm saying she was like, oh yeah, I'll talk to them about it. And she's like,
yeah,
she's flip-flopping a little bit in this, but you know, this could all be part of our sort of unreliable narrator, different points of view.
Oh, that's a good
conversation.
Point. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to see who's remembering things correctly. I mean, it all is kind of dependent, I think, on who's telling the story.
From certain point of view, if you will. Did you guys notice they're kind of like worshiping that hole at one point? Like there's that hole on the cliff, and they're all just like, hole, hooray, and they're like doing these motions next to the hole. And I was like, is that kind of like a hole like The Last Jedi, where they're looking at this hole and they're like, stay away from the hole? And it's like, I don't know. It made me think, like, do they sacrifice people down there? What's in the hole? Because they gathered around this thing. It's not like they went to it's not like they went to that courtyard area and did this, or went into the classroom area and did this. They went to this specific spot with this hole, and they sat on it for a couple seconds, that they're like, look at this hole. And I was like, all right, why is this here? And then they just never address it. They're just like, we're here hanging out. And it makes me question, like, they got exiled, so what did they do? I understand the Jedi maybe being like, you can't do magic, or you can't use the Force unless you're a part of what we do. You can't do it. We can do it, but you can't. But there's something a little sketch, and I keep reminding myself that Leslie Headland said that this is the bad guy story, not the good guy story. So I can't help but think, like, okay, what did they do to get exiled? What kind of like dark stuff are they doing? Did they kill some people? Like, what are we talking? Because they're showing you the peaceful kind, like, mothers and women that are taking care of everybody and eating spice creams, and like, look at this beautiful world we created. And you're like, okay, but why did you have to go here to create this world? Why couldn't you just live with everybody else?
Why do you got that hole?
What's with the hole? Go back. They sit on it for like multiple seconds. I was like,
well, are we drawing power from the hole? I don't know.
It's a big question. It's a big question.
I saw Mike Ramori in the comments wrote, the kids were going to get thrown down there. That's why there are no other kids. And I'm not sure if he's joking or not, but there is. And, you know, part of me today wanted to do that with my son, but there was certainly that one moment where the handmaidens are working on the girl's hair, and Osha goes, and plus, we're the only kids here, and the two handmaidens don't look up the whole other time. They both look up and look at each other like, ugh.
Yeah,
Did
and
you
then
notice that?
yes.
What do you guys make of that? Do you think there's other kids or there used to be other kids, or that they're hidden somewhere? Like,
I don't know. I just know that there's a reason why they make these choices in blocking and editing and everything else. So I always question it. Like, there's got to be a reason why they're showing us this clip or this moment. But I did notice the handmaidens kind of look at each other, being like, "Oh, get back to
it was
this."
a very like, oh.
They're also not doing anything either. So it kind of made me laugh. I was like, it's not like they're braiding their hair. Their hair's already braided. So what exactly are they doing? They're just kind of hanging out.
It's like in sitcoms when they have to pretend to eat, or on SNL, they just put the fork to their mouth and there's like,
yeah.
Yeah. Them mentioning that they're the only children here, and that being the one thing that makes the two hairdressers pause. I caught that too. I wonder a little. They've made multiple comments, I think, in this episode about how they nearly went extinct. This coven nearly went extinct, but then they had this miracle of life. These two girls show up, and I'm like, yeah, but like two girls aren't gonna save you. There's just two. You'll probably still go extinct if two is all you're getting. Like, were there other kids at some point? Are there other failed experiments? Like, there are other failed Snokes around? I mean, are we getting into cloning in things in this show?
No.
It seems
Are
like
they planning to use them to make more kids eventually?
Yeah.
Wait, is there cloning in the High Republic, Laura?
Not that I know of, but
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm a little cloned out. I hate to say it.
That's a big layer to add to this story that already has a lot of layers to it. So I doubt that that's what's happening, but
Right.
it does make me question. I'm like, yeah, they recognize that they're the only kids there. Two kids are not going to keep you from going extinct, especially when they are related to each other. So where are we going with this?
The only thing I could think of is, and this is like dark for Star Wars, but people always bring up, oh, Anakin killed kids, so we can do anything we want. But what if there were other kids that maybe weren't necessarily connecting with the thread or the Force or whatever, and they do what they will with the kids? You get the hole there. I don't know. And then that's why we get that conversation about, like, clearly that these two twins were made in a very different way. And was it done in reaction to whatever else they're trying to do for, maybe, like you were saying, Laura, the survival of their religion or whatever? I don't know.
Something dark's going on. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is yet. I'm thoroughly creeped out, but something's
But the Sith
going
have
on.
to be involved because this is a Sith story. So then it becomes, did the Sith know that this coven already didn't really take kindly to the Jedi? A lot of people seem to view the Jedi as too controlling and too in line with the government. Like, they're almost like the Jedi is like the Defense Department of the Republic. And the Jedi are like, well, we have the right to do this and you don't. And they're like, well, screw you. Why? Who says that? We want to do
they
our thing.
definitely rolled in and were like, we have the right to these kids. And they're like, I don't know if
And
that's
she's
the
like,
right
and
word.
first of all, it's not called the Force. It's called the thread. Okay. Around these parts.
But I did notice that I did like the line that Anasea delivered to Indara of, oh, Jedi not knowing their surroundings, how weird. AKA, like, you knew we were here. Let's not play stupid right now.
Oh, yeah.
Which I ultimately think, all these witches get killed. I think Indara tells everybody to kill them all. I think Indara in this episode, because I'm switching now from the one side to the other side. Indara, this entire episode is so cold. You have Soul on one side who's like hugging Osha, telling her it's going to be okay, telling the girls like, hey, we're here to help you. We wouldn't do anything wrong. It's what's best for you. And you have Indara being like, yeah, finish the test. Let's go. Hey, we have a right to the girls. You don't. There's something off about Indara. She seems a little cold to me.
You say she's cold in this episode. She's cold in episode 1 too.
Yes.
She comes off very standoffish in that, and she's got a weird vibe. I'll just say it in that first episode. So I don't know if I buy that she's necessarily that evil though, or maybe she's not. I mean, maybe she has reason to want to take these witches out, and maybe we'll get that story at some point.
Yeah.
But the fact that we've got these first 2 episodes where we've got this younger generation of Jedi that are so against attachment and seem to kind of be calling Soul out on it, and he seems to be on like a completely different wavelength when it comes to attachment. And then you look back at Indara, and she's kind of in the same generation-ish as him. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of different, I think, lines of thought going on in the Jedi where we're not necessarily agreeing. But the fact that she tries to open up this monologue saying Republic law states that they basically get to take kids when they want, I'm like, oh God. Like, first of all, the Republic and the Jedi in bed together is not a good thing. We know that from what happens 100 years down the road. But yeah, it's not good. And yeah, also the Jedi, just like in this situation, I feel like I'm on the side of the witches. I'm like, the Jedi just need to mind their own business. Like, get out, mind your own business, leave these people in peace.
I agree too.
Yeah, you make a good point with Indara that there's more history here that we just don't know yet.
Because it's weird that the first episode, she turns to May and goes, "What do you need, my child?" And then that word never comes out of her mouth when this one girl is crying. One girl doesn't want to leave her mom. She's never like, "It's okay. Come on in. We're here to help." It's very, very specific.
She's all business.
So it's weird to me looking back at episode 1 where she's like, "My child." And I'm like, you wouldn't say this. Why are you saying my child? This is weird. This is being real weird.
Well, and I remember the first time I watched it, because I had felt the same way as you guys. Like from the first episode, I'm like, either Carrie-Anne Moss is phoning this in, or the dialogue's a little just stiff. But she like does this like her intro to Star Wars is her just turning and going, "Yes, my child." Just like
so
that's
weird,
creepy, man. So I was waiting, to compare that to Trinity's entrance in the Matrix, just like completely different worlds.
Or her in the Netflix Marvel series. Like, she is very active, and she is kind of a bad guy, aggressive, but she has more, I don't know, feeling behind her actions.
Yeah. So when I first watched it, and they're testing Osha, and you can tell that there is frustration with everyone in the room except Soul, who's being very patient with her, and he's trying to get the truth out of her.
And Kelnaka. Kelnaka is caring.
Kelnaka
is caring. Torben is not. He is so he's a little rude. He's like, "Yeah, you get one, whatever." Or like something, he got into an argument or something. I'm getting a vibe that like he's not in a good place.
Yeah, I feel like he doesn't call the shots. So he just like he's probably getting tired of just being like
comparison to Jackie Lon, who's like, "Let's do this, team, high five." You have Torben, who's like, "I hate my life. Why am I here? Yeah, sure, you get a lightsaber," and then he ends up with a scar on his face and is silent for 16 years.
And
well, look at who his master is. I mean, he's picking up that coldness from someone more than likely it's her.
That's true. And we go from seeing Soul like again down on his knee to be at Osha's level and connecting with her and saying like, you need to bring yourself to say that. You need to say your truth. We can't say it to your mother. You have to be the one to say it. And then I remember hearing Indara say, "We should continue the test." And I'm just like, holy cow. Like, do not put her on the recruiting commercials for Jedi. Like, she is all business. And I remember writing, I wrote in my words, I was like, she's cold and wooden. I was like, it's so strange. So I definitely have my eye on her. It's a little strange for a Jedi in her position, especially when you're dealing with a little kid. Like, even like the worst Jedi, like, I don't know, Kiadi Mundi. I don't know, I'm not the biggest fan of that guy. He's a player too, and they like let him be a player because of his species or whatever. But which I guess is canon. His species is endangered, so he's allowed to like get around, but every other Jedi can't. It's in Wikipedia. I don't know, but she's just very cold to me. And the other thing that stuck with me is I liked the Kelnaka moment with Osha. That was like this sweet little moment, which was nice because I feel like this show doesn't have a lot of humor, or at least like really like good humor. And softer moments, it's like heavy and dark, and like this mystery is hanging over all of our heads. We're trying to figure it out. But
There's only soft soul moments. Hashtag
soft soul
soft
moments.
soul moments.
There you go. But
It's like a
they did-
Kleenex ad when he shows up on
Yeah.
screen.
But
Soft soul moments.
they didn't show us May's test. So that's why
didn't.
we got the Osha Kelnaka scene. Was they didn't want to show us whatever happened with May's test. All of a sudden she goes in first, she comes out, we don't see what happens, but then we get all of the Osha stuff. So that to me is interesting. When we come back again, are we going to see May's test and what happened there? Because to me, my guess is that May is actually not very connected with the Force the way Osha is, which is ironic because when they were doing the push test, Osha was hiding behind May because May is more confident and probably more aggressive. We saw her with that little butterfly. She was like choking it or whatever.
Those are the kinds of things I'd like to see in Galaxy's Edge, by the way. Like that tree and the butterflies is like what I wanted for Galaxy's Edge.
That would be cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so Osha, I feel like might be like the one that they're really focused on here. And it's almost like...
Oh, I was just going to say, I have a different take on it. I bet that they just sensed that dark side in May. I bet that they were immediately like, oh God, no. Like, I mean, they sensed it in Anakin and in the Phantom Menace, and they were just like, no way. Like, we can pick up, like, are you not picking up on this, Qui-Gon? Like, that's wild because I can sense it. And I wonder if maybe they picked up a little bit on that in here. But I bet you're right. I bet we do see that in the sort of May point of view episode. We see her test.
Yeah. It is interesting when you look at how the episodes are titled. They're one words with slashes. And then this episode, which is only Osha's perspective, is one word, no slashes.
Which was Destiny.
So some people were saying online that they thought it was like May and Osha's points of view, May and Osha's points of view, then just Osha's point of view.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, because Anastasia said something to Osha about the word destiny, and I forget what she said. I don't know if you guys recall what it was, but it was one of their last conversations that they had. And she said her path.
She said that destiny was a choice. It's not something that's you have to make the choice for yourself.
Yeah, something like that. So I don't know what the other would be, but I think that's a good point. The fact they had the two different terms for the first two episodes and just one here. So maybe episode 6 or whatever will be called whatever the flip side of this is. Interesting. So what did you guys think? Let's just like to bring it back to like a lighter note. What did you guys think of Kelnaka? We finally got some Kelnaka here, aside from him slamming a door on a couple of Huttese speaking hikers, which I think are plants from Chimere. But anyway. I thought Kelnaka was cool, but I still got to see him. I got to see a Wookiee using a lightsaber, so I'm not there yet.
I thought for sure that we were going to get like the full Kelnaka episode, given how the pattern has gone up until this point. But yeah, so now I'm wondering, I'm like, what are we going to get next episode? Because this one sort of ended with that last shot of May. And so I'm like, okay, well, are we going to get the May? Or are we going to circle back and actually get the Kelnaka episode? Because I would be very curious to see some things from his point of view, although I'm not entirely sure. I guess they'll have to just translate the Sherrywook on screen. We didn't get any of the translations.
I'd love that. A full episode in Sherrywook. Oh, yeah, so good.
I'd take that. Just like straight up holiday special. Let's just do it. Actually, yeah, let's do that. Don't translate any of it. Just do holiday special style where they just speak in Sherrywook the whole time. No translation.
Someone must. I bet someone figured out how to speak Sherrywook. Maybe it's Jonas. I don't know.
I mean, he is pretty good at it. Yeah, definitely. Kelnaka, I think, is he seems so calm and so nurturing, kind of literally like Chewbacca. They were like, it's Chewbacca just with a shaved head and a robe. Because that's basically what he's like, they're fixing stuff like Chewbacca always was. I feel like Soul and him are kind of like the nurturing, understanding, calm personas in this kind of troop of miscellaneous misfit Jedi. And then you have Indara and Torben, who Torben's doing whatever Indara says, and Indara's like very much like, this is not what we're doing. You need to stop. I'm taking control here. Like, she just goes in so power hungry against someone else that's also power hungry. I As a side note, a complete side note, when Anastasia says that they can have spice creams, I internally went, ugh, because nothing is more frustrating as a parent when you say, no, you can't have this. And then the other parent goes, come on in, have whatever you want. And then you look like the bad guy. I felt for Mother Coral so bad. It happened last week with my dad. We had the kids with my dad, their grandfather. And she asked me for a cookie. And I said, no cookie. You have to eat dinner first. And she went, Grandpa, can I have a cookie? And Bill Gill was like, have a cookie. And I was like, oh, all right.
The luxury of being a grandparent. When my mom
Yeah,
always
but
did that.
but that moment I was like, this is too real. This is too,
Yeah.
I felt this
Yeah.
one too hard.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what to feel about like the character like Coral, because she said like I did not bring them into this world to give them to monks or whatever the line was.
I'm gonna cut your tongues out. Speak another word, I cut your tongues out. Yeah, she's aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, either that or she's just like protective of them, and I don't want to like judge her based on her look, but she doesn't look like the nicest person in the world. Like she has horns on her head, you know. I'm not here to judge. I'm sure all Zabraks are made in differently. I'm not trying to offend any Zabraks who might be watching, so my apologies. But I do think that is interesting of how protective she is, but it feels like Anastasia is closer with them than Coral. Coral feels like more of like the disciplinarian mother, and Anastasia is more of like nurturing in that way. And I guess that works with that dichotomy. But I just can't wrap my head around, like, I can't speculate too much more on the Coven, just because like you brought up, Laura, there's going to be more that we get from them, because we just have, I feel like we have more questions now than we did last week.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I definitely have a lot more questions than I had before. There, you bring up really good points. I think one of them is there's definitely between the two parents, there's good cop and there's bad cop. And initially, I think Mother Anastasia does come off as dad a little bit. Like she's going to be the more lenient one. She's going to give the kids
let my
ice
sweet
cream,
girls have sweet treats. And I was like,
exactly.
ugh,
Yeah.
they just messed up. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I picked up on that too. I question a little bit what's going on with her character, not just because she comes off pretty aggressive, but also because in that pile of dead witches there at the end, I don't think she's in that pile. And we see the dead Mother Anastasia, but I don't think we really see her. At least maybe she's upside down, you just can't see. I don't know. But I wonder if which one?
Coral?
Yeah, Coral. I don't think that she's in that pile of bodies. So there might be something more going on with her.
And Osha didn't call out for Mother Coral. She called out for Mama to Mama Anastasia.
That is true. That's very true.
And Anastasia was by herself outside the whole building. So all the other people were grouped together, and that's where we heard that scream when Osha is below. In the subtitles, it's like witches screaming, and then you hear a big boom, and it seems that's when they die. And then when they go outside, there's Anastasia all by herself. So was she defending them all and protecting them all against the Jedi? Was she taking them on herself? If so, that's going to be an awesome scene to watch. Can't wait to watch it. But yeah, it's really weird how she's separated from everybody else.
The only thing that I hope, and I also want to touch on like the end where we see like May going to the tree, and clearly they're like showing us like that sense of just abandonment, and her sister's left, and like all she ever wanted was her and her sister the two are one, and that whole thing that they have together, that she was definitely more into than Osha was, because Osha wants to be her own person, and May is just like content. She's completely content with where she is, her station in life, that she's an identical twin, what have you, all that, and Osha's the opposite. But she shows up at that tree and there's no one there, and that's how the episode ends. So it's like, does the helmety person show up and take her away, and that's how she becomes this apprentice? Like, I don't know how linear that's going to be, but I was definitely concerned with May and the fire, and like her telling Osha like, how I'll stop you, I'll kill you. I was like, oh, so what's going on there? Because I don't think I ever told while holding fire in my hand or whatever, told my sibling that I was going to kill them. So that was that, especially at 8 years old. So that definitely caught me off guard and sent off bells in my head too. But I can't help but so Laura, I've been telling Lacey this like since before the show came out. My nervousness about this show was making the Jedi look either really stupid or bad and like evil in a way. And I'm sensing that with this whole, like you were saying, tied in with the Republic, and like they feel like they have the ultimate authority. But I can't come to terms with if the Jedi did this. The only thing I can think of is if they did do this, it's meant like someone either internally amongst the Jedi or someone set it up to make it look like the Jedi did it. Because if the Sith are only 2 at max or whatever, Darth being rule of 2, to take down the Jedi has to be systemic, sort of like Palpatine. But at this point in time, like around the prequel time, there's already distrust with the Jedi, and the Jedi are already sort of slipping up, and they're not sensing the Sith. But in this time, they're still, like the opening crawl for episode 1 says, like they're still at the height. It's the height of the Jedi or whatever, the height of their powers. I think it would just be like really messed up if this just sort of happened under their watch, and they're like just like Vernestra's trying to cover it up. And I just don't like the idea of the Jedi coming out of this show looking bad. One, because it would upset me because I always thought Jedi were virtuous and tried to do the right thing. And 2, it's going to be way harder for us folks who like Star Wars to defend it against people like, oh, they ruined Jedi now. Disney ruined Jedi for everybody. So it's just, I hope there's more to it so that the Jedi still save face by the end of this show, while understanding that, they need to do something to turn the tables, because there's 2 Sith versus all these Jedi who are in line with the Republic. They have to turn the public against the Jedi. So I'm thinking it has to be something where someone internally is doing something to sabotage the Jedi.
I think your fears are not unfounded, unfortunately. And I have a little bit of the same worry, because not just because I also just love the Jedi. I love them in every era of Star Wars, and I particularly love them in the High Republic. I mean, like unconditionally, in some senses in the High Republic. So I have a hard time wrapping my mind around them being the bad guys too. I think of it this way: as it is with cops, there are always bad apples. And I wonder if maybe that's the thread they start to pull on a little bit, no pun intended, in this series, is that there are good, but there are also bad.
That's what I've been thinking. It's so many like comparisons to cops for me.
Yeah, it is. It really is. And I think it'll eventually come back to that, the first 2 episodes, with the philosophy of you can't kill the Jedi with a weapon, and you have to find a way around that. I mean, if you're turning them on each other, which seems to be what happens with this foursome on Brendok, where we definitely see that promo footage of Kalnaka fighting with Torben. I mean, that's part of the method of not killing a Jedi with a weapon. Let them do it themselves. But yeah, I'll be very curious to see that play out. But I think you're right to be a little bit worried about that. I worry about that too. I don't want to have to be the one defending Jedi.
Right.
I just don't like. That's not why I'm on the internet. That's not why I'm
on exactly
Twitter interacting with other fans. So yeah, and like I said, there are Jedi in the High Republic in these books that we're reading right now that I just would do anything for, and I can't imagine anybody that would ever interact with them being that type of person that would take all of this down. I don't know. It's hard to imagine.
Yeah. And the only other possibility in terms of that carnage that we see with all the witches is, they show us in this episode Torben getting sort of possessed with the black eyes and everything, and he falls to his knees and he looks up. Is that like sort of like a tease of what happened on a grand scale? So like did they possess all the Jedi and have them, like, did someone possess all the Jedi and have them do that to make the Jedi look evil, to turn the tables, like sacrifice some for the greater good of all, sort of thing? Like we'll sacrifice some of our witches as long as the Jedi, it's known that they came in and they killed us all. The Jedi are horrible, like, could that possession thing be a part of it? I'm glad I don't know. I'm glad there's options on the table. I'm just not. I'm nervous of which one it's going to end up being.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have so many questions after this episode. I think it did a really good job of making me think, okay, what's next? Because they have to answer all these other things, and you still have to see so many different points of view. Most importantly, May's, because May comes from nowhere, starts a fight with Osha, leaves, and then you see her again when they meet up on that bridge, which they seemingly happen to be at the same exact moment.
Yeah.
They did lead on in the beginning of the series with the first two episodes that Osha and May can feel one another. And May says in this episode, like, oh, if I can't find you, I always come here. But it seems like it's also like a force field thing. Like they can feel each other's presence. You have Osha getting visions of May. It's just, I
Right.
feel
Oh,
like
right.
that's where they met up on the bridges because they sensed that each one was there. Or I could be just totally overlooking it. And it's just like, hey, we wrote them to be there because it made sense for the scene. That might be it too. But I have a lot of questions.
Yeah, we do have a couple of super chats, right, Lacey?
We do. So let me get those up. So first we have Christian. Thank you so much. He says Master Soul, more like Master Soul, SOUL.
Thanks, buddy.
And of course, it wouldn't be a live show without Freezy2324. What up, man? He said TRB. I always try my best to defend anything Star Wars related, even The Last Jedi. That is a loaded statement, Freezy. But last night's episode has concerned me. Star Wars is being milked too much. What do you guys think? Is Star Wars being milked too much?
I don't know what he means like with the context of that.
Is it like too much content? Like we're getting inundated with too much of it, or they're running out of ideas?
Star Wars aren't being right, or maybe the stories aren't being as impactful as they should be because they're trying to do so many things. Like we talked about how this could be a movie. It could be a one-hit movie, but they're breaking it up into pieces and they're drawing it out and they're, that's what I'm assuming anyway.
I have a hot take question because, I watched Game of Thrones. I like that show. And I feel like from a production standpoint, that show was like, maybe even still to this day, like the best I've seen on TV for a live action show. And that budget was like $100 million for 8 episodes or whatever. And this show is $180 million for 8 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And I know like VFX costs a lot and they have creatures and, but so does Game of Thrones. This doesn't, like, if I watch these two back to back, I would assume that Game of Thrones had 5 times the budget that this show has. So when I give it the 6.5, it's not necessarily just like in story stuff. I'm very curious how and it's my fault. I went into the show expecting Andor like feel and look because they didn't do the volume, and Leslie Headland's like no volume. We did real sets and all that stuff. And I know they have these street sets, and I can tell that, but it still feels claustrophobic. It feels like they do like the like skyline shot, and then we're back to this street in clearly London that is a set, and it just still feels compacted to me. It doesn't feel like it cost $22.5 million per episode. So I'm just wondering where this money is going. And on top of production budget, you have to add P&A, which is like this show could easily have cost $300 million to make. And like, how are they recouping that? People aren't signing up just to watch the Acolyte, I don't think. So it's very interesting to me. And I know it's a hot take, but because people get upset about that. And I'm not taking away from the people who work on it because they killed it. And they always kill it, whether that's Neil Scanlon in the creature department or ILM in the visual effects. They're great. But when I compare it to a show that had $80 million less of a budget like Game of Thrones, and I don't think it looks anything even close to the quality of Game of Thrones, I have to ask that question. I don't know if you guys feel that way, so that's why I'm just throwing it out there.
I wonder if they were spent a lot of that budget de-aging these actors in this episode. And I think it's just, is it just Indara and Soul? So I guess it couldn't have been that much, but
yeah,
I don't know. They do look pretty different. So I don't know that. I wonder about that too, but I went into it the same with pretty high expectations, not because of Andor, because that Star Wars show, while critically acclaimed, and I'm glad a lot of people liked it. Just wasn't for me. But just because it was in the High Republic, I went into this with massive expectations, and I knew I shouldn't have. I tried to curb them, and I just couldn't. And
Me too.
it feels very like, for me, it's just kind of surface level High Republic. Like, you just slapped gold robes on your Jedi and decided to call it High Republic just because it was within 100 years of the rest of the stuff. It doesn't
Okay.
necessarily feel as, I don't know, as in it as I would have liked. But I get where you're coming from with the claustrophobia stuff. I tend to not notice that kind of thing as much. Even with Kenobi, I didn't really pay that much attention to it, but I can definitely see where people might be feeling that way with this show. And it is kind of surprising given that high budget, but I don't know. What do you think, Lacey?
Well, I kind of understand where John's coming from. I think because the sets really that they did these big scenes in were the cantina set, which we saw for 5 minutes. We never saw it again. And then they've been on a ship and like Coruscant training room. So I get what you're saying. It's not the sweeping big sets or big locations like we see in Andor. Andor seems so vast because they shot them in the countryside, in the mountains, and all. Whereas this is very much room, meeting room, ship, stone training room. It's very much rooms.
Occasional shot of a mountain.
Yeah, B-roll of a mountain that they're throwing in that they're like, this is where they are, right? They're here.
And then you're going to put 2 moons up in the right.
Yeah, I'm interested to see. I did notice it with Kenobi because it felt like they were in the same room the entire time.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we get some crazy awesome sets later in this series. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I would love to see that.
That's fair too.
I am curious though, Laura, as someone that's such a big High Republic fan, which I truly appreciate you coming on to discuss this because I love this perspective. What is something you would hope? We're almost halfway through. What is something you would hope for the rest of the series that you'd be like, you know what? It was awesome. Like, what would you see as a High Republic fan that would like blow your mind?
That's really hard to say. It's one of those things where I think I'd kind of hoped that once I saw it, I would know it. And
Right.
I couldn't really even pinpoint what exactly I want out of it. And I think at this point, it's probably better that I don't.
How are you feeling about
Unfortunately.
Vernestra?
I think she's fine. I think that a lot of these complaints that she is not the same Vernestra that's in the books, I'm like, she's 100 years older. Like, I get it. Like, I completely understand it. I mean, think about are you like the same person you were 10, 20 years ago?
Try 3
Probably
years
not.
ago.
Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah.
people change and grow, and but it is just interesting to see how she's evolved. I will be curious to see more. I think taking the one character from the High Republic, the novels, and putting her in this show and making her this sort of uptight council leader, basically replacing Yoda, I'm not sure that was the right move. But I'm willing to stay open-minded. It was still really exciting to see her. I mean, when I got to go see the first 2 episodes in theaters, in a theater
Nice.
full of Star Wars fans, and
How
getting to
was
sort of
it in
see.
theaters?
It was great. I mean, I had not a not great theater experience just because like a couple people around me were talking quite a bit, which was really annoying. But I was there with my friends. I was able to try and tune it out as best I could. Those moments when Vernestra comes on screen and when they reference the Barrage vow, I mean, those moments where you can feel the like gasp in the room, like that was really
cool.
exciting. I really
That's
miss
cool.
like seeing Star Wars in theaters with other fans.
Yes.
Oh, me
yes.
I
too.
wish that they would do more of these theater screenings. That was really, really cool. But yeah, this is also one of those things where Vernestra like isn't exactly my favorite character in the High Republic books.
Okay.
So in some ways, I think she is pretty consistent actually, because she can be sort of uptight, even as a 16-year-old girl, and she still sort of seems that way, just in kind of a different way. If that makes any
Gotcha.
sense at all.
No, it absolutely does. Yeah, because I wasn't sure because there's still more High Republic coming. There's one more phase, right? And it's gonna.
We're
lead
in
up-
phase 3 now. There's like one more wave. So we've got the first 2, or it's like the first adult novel, the first 2 adult novels, the first young adult novel. So there'll be more of each, but it's almost done. It's supposed to wrap up, I think, next summer.
Oh, right on.
Wow,
And is
very
it gonna
cool.
go right up to the Acolyte, or are they leaving room? Do
I
they
doubt
reveal
it.
that? Oh, okay.
No, they haven't.
Gotcha.
They haven't revealed that, but I highly doubt it.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Do you feel probably better question for you once the show's done, but like do you feel any sense of validation for like knowing the High Republic, and are there Easter eggs and stuff that you pick up on that you feel like is a nice like thanks for reading the High Republic, this is for you type stuff?
A little bit. I mean, the Barrage vow was cool, but you don't even need the High Republic for that. Like that first showed up in a 2017 Vader
The
comic. So
Vader,
I think
yeah.
if yeah. And I guess getting Vernestra is fine, but again, she's such a different character. It's almost hard to even compare them.
Hmm.
So it's hard to say. I do really like seeing all the Jedi robes, the gold robes. I do like that one scene from the trailers. We get all the different lightsabers lit up and the Jedi all sort of running. Like that's a really cool scene. It kind of reminds me of some of the visuals that we get in the High Republic, but some of those visuals kind of echo the prequel trilogy too. So
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
hard to kind of pinpoint any real reward outside of Vernestra Row in the Barrage Vow at this point. I'd like to think that there's more to come, but at this point, that's pretty much where we're at.
Interesting.
I hope
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
I hope there's
Yeah.
more.
I mean there's ways to go for sure. But anything else on this episode that you want to toss out there before we close out?
Well, we do have one more super chat if we want to get to
Oh, I was
that.
gonna get that.
So Armin Rojas, thank you so much for the super chat. He said, I enjoyed the episode, but what threw me off was how the scene was after an explosion. I would expect more damage, more debris. Did the witches die without burns? How is that possible? They all looked like they were just sleeping. That is true. I think that's the Disney thing of like showing no blood. Like it's a very kind of like they keep it PG by not
Yeah, it's
showing
not gonna look
any
like Braveheart. Like
damage. But to his defense, like if it's an explosion, how would everybody just be kind of oh no, what happened?
it's like when I was a kid and I was like pretending I was sleeping. I would like clench my eyes, so my mom would be like, "You're not." I would be like,
Yeah, whereas Snow got cut in half and you see him like dead on the floor, like these
"Yeah,
ladies were all just
that we knew he was dead because he had his tongue out and his eyes were open."
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
I don't know.
What
With
do you guys
Star
think?
Wars
Are they all
today,
dead? Are they not dead? What do you guys
I
think?
wouldn't be surprised if they're alive, but I kind of feel like they need to be dead in order for us to keep the present version of the story going forward without more clutter.
Right.
There needs to be stakes, and this is the thing that Star Wars does when they undo a character's death, is that now it just kind of feels like there aren't stakes anymore. So
Right.
my hope is that
Yes.
they are dead and they stay dead, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe some of them
Yeah.
rise. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. All right. So yeah, we have episode 4 next week. We will see what comes out of that. Probably maybe back in the present, checking in with some of those characters that we got a break from on this episode. I do see we have one more super chat, Lacey.
We do. It's from Fred Tastic. Love that name. Thanks
Fred.
I said this episode was a miss for me, but I'm still all in for the Acolyte. The mother's discussion of how the twins were conceived. I got the feeling they were laying the groundwork for Shmi's pregnancy. That's a good point. It definitely was a moment where I was like, oh. And then she was like so boldly being like, there is no father. I was like, yeah, you tell him. You tell him there's no dad. I don't need a dad.
But is Fred inferring that Anakin's pregnancy was manually created?
Dark
then?
magic.
I don't like that.
Maybe that's where they're going. We don't know.
What was that comic where there's the visualization of like
Palpatine doing
shrouding
it. Yeah.
around Shmi or whatever? That I don't like that. Like that then people think that Palpatine made Anakin. Like, are you guys down with that? I'm not down with that.
I don't know. I'd have to see how they did it.
I was just thinking about that. I'm like, didn't they kind of establish that that's how it happened? But I don't know. I think that almost seemed more like she was already pregnant and then Palpatine had some influence kind of after the fact, but it doesn't actually establish like how did she get pregnant? It was just
that's kind of how
by
I
the
was
Force.
thinking. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you wonder though if it's going to be like, is it going to be repetitive if we do the same thing here? I mean, they're like, we are blessed with the miracle of life. I'm like, there's more to this story. The story here. So is it going to be repetitive? If it's literally the same thing as Anakin as these children were created from
Right,
the
right.
Force. I don't.
I
Mhm.
agree with that, especially, and also the twin thing. But I don't think that this is going to have any connection with Anakin, just based on what Leslie Headland said, which was, when I pitched this, I wanted to go as far back as they would let me go, so I didn't mess up the stuff I grew up watching. And she was like, I'm terrified of doing that. I don't want to go into George's stuff. And so I don't think she would then say, let me retcon the entire prophecy, and it has to do with, like, I can't, like, that would be wild if she said that in an interview and then
She
they
did
dropped
seem
that on
very
us.
scared in general about everything. She was like, I don't even know why I'm
Like,
doing
that's
this.
the one thing I don't even think Filoni wants to touch, is like, I'm not screwing with the prophecy of the chosen one. So I hope that's not the case. I like that this, because this is the furthest away we've gone so far. I know the Mangold thing's coming. I'm talking about in live action. Obviously, High Republic's longer before this, but
Yeah.
I don't. I think they wanted to make this its own story and not connect it. I think the loosest connection we're going to get is maybe Plagueis, but that's far removed enough, because then he has to get Palpatine and stuff. I don't want this connected to Anakin, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's me. Anything else, guys, before we close this party out?
No, I think I'm good. I can't wait to see what's next.
I think we've
I
wrapped
like.
this
I just need.
episode up pretty
I
good.
wish they did this all at once, like Laura was saying, and they did the Netflix. Like, at least two halves. Give us halves.
That's a good,
Please.
yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
I get why they
Stranger Things
didn't.
did
I mean,
that, didn't they?
if they're wanting to keep people signed up for the
Mhm.
longest amount of time possible, I get it. I get why they didn't, but I wish that they
Mhm.
hadn't. I just, yeah.
Imagine like social media with 4 episodes out, just like, just warfare, just bullets everywhere.
It
just
would
like,
literally be like you would take the day off from work because you'd have to watch them all before you got spoiled.
Yeah.
it'd be Ron Burgundy
Because
with
my favorite thing now that people do is
escalated
they
quickly.
put up an image on Twitter with all their spoilers in a note, and then they're like, Acolyte thoughts and spoilers, and I'm like, the show came out 3 minutes ago.
That was
Like,
me last night, but I meant to hide mine. I meant to mark it as sensitive, and I forgot. So
How do you do
but
that?
yeah,
I didn't even
get
know
it.
you could do that.
So when you I can show you. When you
All right.
when you actually like pick a photo, there's like 3 options at the bottom, and one of them is to flag it. And
yours
can
wasn't
flag it
spoilers
as-
though. I'm talking like legit, like this person's dead, this happened, this, like yours were like
Oh.
thoughts about like, hey, this is how I feel about the
Yeah,
episode.
yeah.
That's completely different, Laura. I'm talking about people that are
I
literally
appreciate
like,
that.
yo, this person died, and you're like, what? Come on. Or like
Yeah.
they post, I don't know how people do it. They post screenshots. I can't take screenshots of Disney Plus. Like,
Thank
how are
you.
people? How are people?
I don't know.
taking
When I
screenshots?
find out how people do that, it's all over for you guys. I'm gonna figure it out someday. But I don't know.
The only thing
don't
I
get
can
it.
think of is that they're watching it via VPN or something through some type of thing.
I do. This would be me. Okay, here we go.
Oh, jeez.
All right, cool. Well, thank you to everybody for listening.
Wait, one last
watching.
question.
Yes.
Laura, are you in the Yord Horde? Are you in the Pipsqueaks, Soul Patrol?
That's hilarious. I was literally gonna ask you guys right before
I'm
you were
Soul
like
Patrol,
gonna
I
sign off.
think.
That's so funny. I don't know if I'm fully. I would guess I'm kind of. I've dipped my toe into the Yord Horde. I wouldn't say that I've dove in yet. But I'm
You're on
there.
the trial. You're on the 3-month
Sure.
trial.
The Soul Patrol is a fun place to be. I'm down with that. But yeah, the Yord Horde. I'll probably get there at some point. Like what a dork. Like he's just such a dork. It's so funny. Like steaming his coat. Like dude, what the hell? It's so great. I
Put
love
your
that people
clothes
are having
on.
fun with it though. That is one of the things that made like it had a little bit of a turning point for me for this show. Because I didn't have the strongest reaction to episodes 1 and 2, but seeing the fandom like really respond to that character in particular has been
Yes.
really fun and really funny. And I really appreciate all the people posting memes and arts and silly stuff about him. It's just great.
I agree. Charlie Barnett is really good, and I saw Russian Doll a few years ago, just the first season, and he was really good in that. And when he was casting this, I'm like, oh, he's got to get a big role because he already worked with her and stuff. And he hasn't had a big role yet, really. But I find the character ironically funny because he's not trying to be funny, but he's just such a Boy Scout that it's like And he also, it's almost like he is like, you don't invite him to your party because you feel like he's either going to make it lame or he's going to tell like, the homeowners association on you for having a party or something.
Yeah.
And he it's like Michael Scott when he doesn't get invited to Jim's barbecue in the office. It's just like, we
He
like
shows
him
up
at
and
work,
does
it's fine,
the
but I
karaoke.
don't want to hang out with this guy. Yeah.
But then you
So
feel bad for him that he doesn't get invited. Like, he's the
Yes, you do.
RA. He's definitely
Yeah.
he's the dork. He's definitely the RA. You're gonna get in trouble, but you also feel bad for not inviting him.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, so far, I mean, Qui-Gon Jinn's my favorite Jedi, so Soul is right in that pocket for me. So he's my guy right now. But I also think, Amanla's doing a great job playing two characters. So there's a bunch of good here. Oh, and Manny Jacinto has been really good. So
Yeah.
I hope we get a lot more of him going forward. But yeah, good stuff. So thank you everybody for listening, watching, being a part of TRB. Make sure you tell your friends about the show, bring them along next time, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate it very much. You can find us on social media at TRB Podcasts. I want to give a special shout out and thank you to our Patreon generals and spice runners. We're actually hopping over to Patreon to do a spice run with Neil, and he's going to be hanging out with us on Patreon for a little bit in a few minutes here. But thank you so much to Carmelo, John Reese, Jetta Rosewater, Frank Grande, Nick Kratz, Chris Morales, Brian Smith, Danny, Mike Ramori, Brendan McLaughlin, Sneaky Zebra, Dave Hornack, Jolton Jedi DiMaggio, and Colin Cormier, who gave a 7 on this episode. How dare you, Colin? And our Spice Runners, David Probus, Neil Shaw, Kendall Gellner, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, and the Fort Worthian. And all of our supporters, listeners, however you take in TRB, thank you very, very, very much. Laura, this has been a pleasure. It's so nice to finally have you on here. I think you and I have only chatted, aside from Twitter, briefly in like Anaheim for a few minutes. It's really cool to hang out with you. So I just want to thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, you guys. This was such a privilege, and I really enjoyed myself. This was great. And yeah, I got to be on a panel with Lacey, but we haven't gotten to spend a ton of time in person. So are either of you going to Japan by chance?
We are.
We're going.
Yay! Oh, that's exciting. My tentative plan is to go too. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. And I'm so sorry of starting this stuff with the 7 out of 10 rating.
I think it's hilarious because I might do 7 again now as a tribute, to be honest with you. But all right, so yeah, follow Laura on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it at @shutup_Laura, right? That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
And on Force Toast podcast and the Jedi Way with our buddies John and Smets, the Outlaw Broca over there. Good guys, good crew. You guys do a good job over there. You guys have fun, which is cool.
Thank you. We do.
Yeah. And then for me, Johnny Hoey on X is pretty much where you can find me. I do a lot of tweeting about the Yankees too, though, just so you know. Lacey, how about you?
People can find me on social media at Lacey Gillerin and on TikTok at It's Lacey Gillerin and on TRB Podcasts and Nerdy and Nice, our pop culture podcast on Mondays.
Yeah. So Lacey and I will be back with you on Monday for Nerdy and Nice. A lot of cool stuff to talk about. And yes, Glenn Powell is re-entering the conversation on Monday.
He is. I'm sorry. I'm not, though.
We have to review Hitman. We got to do it. And then, of course, AcoNight again next week, where we'll have another guest with us and another clue for your Sith code and more speculation and hopefully more Kelnaka and more good times here. But thank you all again so much. So from the 3 of us here on AcoNight, we'll see you around, kids.